and welcome to Cover Story. Today we are in conversation with Dr. Jitendra Singh. He is the Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office. He is also the Minister for Personnel, Public Grievances, Science and Technology, Atomic Energy, and apart from that he is also a doctor himself. Congratulations and welcome to this
Thank you, Priya. Thank
conversation.
you.
Dr. Singh, before, I would really like to use this occasion to talk to you a lot about, there's a lot being asked about the way the Modi government does its governance. Unka governance with a difference hai, citizen-centric governance. And you are on ground and implementing a lot of his schemes. But before that, I would like to focus also on your home state because you're also a two-time MP from Jammu. There is also talk of elections in the Union Territory. What is happening in Jammu Kashmir?
No, I think in the last few years, if you would have noticed, the level of terrorism, level of violence has come down remarkably, and the active lifespan of any average terrorist is also come down very drastically. Today, you hear of a new name in the world of terrorism, and within 2-3 days, you find that it's been liquidated. Unlike earlier times when they would make a Robin Hood out of this. So that is also been possible because under Prime Minister Modi, there has been a very decisive approach as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, both in terms of bringing down the militancy with the approach of zero tolerance towards terrorism, and at the same time replicating all the good practices of governance which have been prevalent in the rest of the country, but they were not being implemented there or exercised there on the levy of Article 370 or whatever, because the governments there found it convenient not to implement all those rules and laws and then have their own fiefdom. So I think it's been, and of course, third part is the development. Many of the projects which had got stalled, halted in the earlier years have actually been reinvented and reinstalled during the last 8-9 years of the Modi government. I think one of the most distinguished examples is that of a project called Shahpur Kandi project, which is an irrigation power project located on the borders of the Punjab and Himachal Pradesh. Both the areas are going to be benefited, the border district of Punjab as well as the border district of Jammu and Kashmir. Yeah. But for certain political reasons, the project was halted for the last about almost 3.5 decades. It was Prime Minister Modi's personal intervention which revived it. Among the best practices, now I see the Kashmir-centric political party, the Congress party, its allies who've been in governance over there, always raise the bogey of identity, special status, etc., etc. Right. But the rules and the laws that they were holding back in the garb of that were actually the ones which were meant for social welfare. Like, for example, the Dowry Act, the Child Marriage Act, the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. Now, this is nothing to do with the political identity or the stature or the status or the special.
So you mean under 370 they were still.
Absolutely. So all these laws, because they were following. Absolutely, because they were following a policy of appeasement, appeasing a certain section which was their vote bank. Similarly, also for their convenience. Now, I think there's one very notorious example. If you recall, during emergency, Mrs. Indira Gandhi brought in an amendment which increased the term of the Lok Sabha as well as the state assemblies from 5 years to 6 years, because she had received certain intelligence inputs that the election was, not compatible at that period of time. So she extended it through an amendment. I think that was again 42nd or 43rd amendment. Then, but in 1977, the government changed. The Janta government, led by Prime Minister Morarji Desai, came in, and it was decided that this was undemocratic. It was reversed. I think that was 45 or 46. So all the state assemblies and all the and including the Lok Sabha reverted back to 5-year term. Now look at what happened in Jammu and Kashmir. First time when they increased it to 5 years, from 5 years to 6 years, you had the Chief Minister from National Conference, Sheikh Abdullah. They immediately adopted that rule because they had that prerogative of deciding what to adopt, what not to adopt. But it got reversed. They took the levy of 370 and it allowed it to continue until the territory turns into a union territory and Article 370 gets abrogated on the 5th, 6th August 2019. The term of Jammu Kashmir Assembly, ironically, continued to be 6 years. So you see, this was almost a misuse or abuse of Article 370 for their own vested interests.
But around 6 years, your government is not holding elections only.
No, that is for reasons that because of earlier there was COVID, then there is security situation, because Jammu Kashmir is a sensitive territory. So I think at an appropriate time they'll take a call.
Will it be this year? Because there is
No,
now
no,
the delimitation has also
no.
happened.
I can't be saying that. It's out of turn for me to actually give an opinion on that, because the prerogative lies with the Election Commission of India, and of course the security agencies decide about the security part. But as far as the Bharatiya Janata Party is concerned, of which I happen to be a Karyakarta, we are always ready for any election for that matter, whether it be the local body or the Lok Sabha or the assembly, and that applies across the country.
But it's interesting the examples you gave of 370, because we only know about the broader things, the right to own land or whatever. But these
Yeah,
little.
see, now even for Pakistan refugees, they were deprived of their citizenship rights, voting rights. Now, the interesting fact, which I'm sure the history will sometimes try to ponder about, is that two persons from this refugee clan went on to become prime ministers. Dr. Manmohan Singh, he belonged to Jhelum district of Pakistan. Dr. I.K. Gujral also came from Pakistan. And sometimes I wonder, if they had chosen to settle down in Jammu Kashmir, destiny would have deprived them of the opportunity to become prime minister, because they were not even granted citizenship rights for several long decades. Nowadays, even if you go and settle abroad in a Western country, and after a couple of years you get a green card or something like that. So this was done very by a design to hold on to a small voter section, which would keep, repeating them again and again, so that they could perpetuate their dynasty rule from generation to generation.
Speaking of one of the dynasties, Omar Abdullah recently, he joined Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo. I'll come to that in a bit. But he says that Kashmir mein aaj bhi jamhuriyat ki bhi kami hai. And he pointed out that, this government talks about, internationally you reach out to Muslim countries. But when it comes to Kashmir or Muslims within India, you don't even have an MP.
No, see, I would not make a very personal comment, because but talking on the issue per se, I think today we live in an evidence-based era. So we have to support what we say with a certain amount of evidence and substance. The evidence is otherwise. For example, for 65 years, Jammu Kashmir did not have district development councils. Now, who would answer that? And all these half a century or so, the government was run by National Conference Congress. Why, when the rest of the country you had district development, it was only under Prime Minister Modi that in 2019-20 we got first ever district. People had never heard. And on the contrary, the Kashmir-centric political parties were raising slogans like autonomy, like self-rule. Now, what is self-rule? If to my understanding, the self-rule is a rule which emanates from the bottom, from the grassroots, rule of the self. So here, the self-rule meant the rule of the dynasty, but not allowing rule of the local bodies to happen.
Correct.
Similarly, in Panchayati Act, we have 73 and 74th Amendment. Ironically, again, the amendment was brought by the Congress government at the center. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister.
Shankar Iyer.
Yes. And that, in a way, it's an enabling amendment. It allows the central grant to go straight to the local body budget. It was not implemented in Jammu and Kashmir on the levy of 370. If had that been allowed, it would have led to the empowerment of the block development councils, the sarpanchis, the panchayats. So these governments had deprived the empowerment of the grassroots, even the grassroots panchayat elections were not happening for years together. Corporation elections stalled for over a decade. So I don't know who's talking of democracy.
But a little before I go into politics, you're also from Jammu. You're a doctor, endocrinologist. But you joined the BJP, I think, in 2012, and fought your first election in.
No, I joined earlier. I fought my first election in 2014. Yeah.
So what made you, turn towards the BJP?
No, it's just like that. I had been associated with them right from the beginning. In fact, the larger, the ideology family, they were actually, in a way, my guardians also when I was in the college in Chennai. So I was an active participant in most of their programs. Even if you see the Vidyarthi Parishad offices here, they have photographs of me in the early 90s when Mr. Kedarnath Sahni was there.
From the,
so, no, I was associated with all these programs, Bharat Vikas Parishad, etc. But I was not actually into a political wing or an active politics. And then when I was asked to take over as an office bearer in the party, then I had to put in my papers from the government job. And I continued my practice.
Okay, no, it's interesting that,
I mean, that was the time when nobody resigned from a government job to join BJP, at least in my area, because for years together, nobody.
Which year was this?
This is around 2008-9, later. But you see, those days nobody ever visualized the BJP government happening at the center, BJP happening at Jammu and Kashmir out of question.
Totally.
So even those who retired from the government service chose to join Congress or some of the local regional parties like National Congress. Never at all. Even after retirement, people didn't look at BJP. So in fact, you asked me a question at this time when everything is going good. That time people would laugh at me. Some of them thought there's something gone wrong with him. So
that's one thing. What made you, look towards,
because
especially from the valley, from the state of Jammu?
But I had been with them moving on for a long time. So when they said I had to take up this one, I said, now it's been all my life, following a particular path, and I wouldn't have been comfortable elsewhere.
Not in the Congress. But this Bharat Jodo Yatra, now Rahul Gandhi is going to culminate it in, it's in 2-3 days. He's right now also in the Srinagar side. He was in your constituency area also, Banial ke baad. So, what do you make of the Bharat Jodo Yatra?
No, I think I wrote that in a piece which was recently published on the national day. They much discussed about the Congress party, also held a press conference. See, the Congress party has actually, if you see from the historic perspective, I also said once in Parliament, history will one day decide who was right on Kashmir, Nehru or Mukherjee. And I think now the time has come, history has delivered its judgment. Because Congress party has actually missed the opportunity in Kashmir. It had opportunity to integrate Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir in the manner the other states were being integrated. But I think it didn't happen also partly because Prime Minister Nehru decided to take over Jammu Kashmir in his own hands and did not allow his own Home Minister Sardar Patel to handle the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the manner he was handling the other princely states, 560 odd. And then maybe allowing this 370, which was a transitory provision. In fact, when in one of the discussions in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Sama Prasad Mukherjee pleaded to Pandit Nehru to have a second thought on 370. And Pandit ji said, Dr. Mukherjee, don't get worried. Ye ghiste ghis jayega. I mean, this will vanish in the course of time. And there was in bracket it was written temporary provision. But the temporary provision was again allowed to continue permanently because they found themselves getting more and more beneficiary of that small vote bank that they had nurtured. So all these things, they missed the opportunity to allow or to enable a complete integration of Jammu and Kashmir, which has happened only after Prime Minister Modi took over, because it required tremendous amount of courage and courage of conviction. So now, doing all these things would not undo that missed opportunity. It would rather be adding to another misdoing. Secondly, even if you see from the point of view the yatra per se, let me not get into the ideology part of it. Whenever BJP tried to take out a yatra to Kashmir, it was stalled, it was halted, it was oppressed. I'll give you 3 main examples. In 1953, Dr. Sama Prasad Mukherjee wanted to enter Jammu and Kashmir. He was arrested right at the border, put under arrest. He died under mysterious circumstances, in spite of the fact that he had intimated Sheikh Abdullah in writing that I am coming, I am the member of parliament from South Calcutta, so whatever courtesy to be extended or whatever. And he also inquired beforehand if he was going to be arrested. He was arrested by deceit, I would say, because that time the Supreme Court of India jurisdiction had not extended to Jammu and Kashmir. So there is a bridge where half of which falls in the Punjab territory, half of it Jammu and Kashmir. So once he crossed that half of it, he was arrested in the other side. Because if he had been arrested this side, it's very interesting, often not discussed, because Punjab was then part of the Supreme Court. They were already ready to go to the habeas for the habeas corpus petition in the Supreme Court. So he was arrested by deceit. He remained behind bars for about 30-40 days and passed away. Secondly, in 1992, when Murli Manohar Joshi ji, Modi ji was with him, again the yatra was stopped. Thirdly, in 2011, Mr. Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj, Anurag Thakur as the youth president, he's just become president of the BJYF, and these senior leaders, Jaitley ji, Sushma Swaraj, Anant Kumar, they were arrested right from the airport, the Jammu airport, and sent back to Punjab. So, unlike that, BJP has not followed the practice of stopping yatras to Jammu Kashmir. We've allowed them. So, I think this is a huge contrast.
Is not allowing
That is different. This is a huge contrast. So I think they should rather be drawing some lessons from that.
In fact, Rahul very interestingly in his speech doesn't talk about the revocation of 370. He talks about restoration of statehood. उसको लेके भी उमर से काफी सवाल हुए थे. I saw at a press conference. So he
No,
says.
in fact, soon after 5th and 6th of August 2019, when the article was revoked, and somebody said, what would be Congress stand? They asked me, I said, Congress should rather be thankful to BJP, because it was they who inserted that phrase, temporary provision, but they could not live up to it.
Right.
So we have actually completed their unfinished task, which Nehru and the successive governments could not do. So if at all they respond, they will have to respond to BJP with gratitude.
Well, that one you can wait for. But I'm going to take a break and continue this conversation. Lots more anecdotes coming up, so stay with us. Hello and welcome back to a cover story conversation with Dr. Jitendra Singh. Dr. Singh, before the break, of course, we were talking about politics of Jammu and Kashmir. One last question on that is the question of statehood. Is the government serious about it?
I think I hardly need to retreat what has been already said on the floor of House, not once but more than once by Home Minister Shri Amit Shah. He said at the appropriate time, the statehood will be reverted to that. So I don't think I need to add anything to that after it's been stated by none less than the Home Minister of India.
We also, at a time where there is a lot of furor over this BBC documentary, the decision to ban it. Now, people are saying, biased hai, I'm not going to that debate, but why ban something? Because that shows, India strong enough to take any criticism.
That apart. Now, the point is that you cannot allow a handful of anarchists to create mayhem with a vested interest. Criticism, if it comes from the right quarters with sincerity, with conviction, is always been welcome, has been said once and again by Prime Minister Modi. But if it is motivated, and in this case, on the one hand, they say BJP doesn't respect the judiciary. On the other hand, they are actually showing by default the contempt of judiciary by favouring a documentary which has about which the judgment of the Supreme Court is otherwise. They have given a clean chit to the then Gujarat government. So I think they have many answers to many questions to answer, and the people who are actually supporting it are the ones who are not doing so with a very clean background record. If you see their past record, they have always been anti-Modi, anti-government, and anti-Modi to the extent of becoming anti-India. So I think they are very hardcore sadists there, So the reason here is entirely different.
So you don't think ignoring it, because the minute you ban it, for sab jaake dekhte hain, aaj you know how it is today. You will get a copy of the movie whether you see it on social media or on WhatsApp. So why give them the attention? Just ignore it.
No, I think no, absolutely. The public has ignored it. See, here we have a head of the government who's been the head of the government for the longest period of time, first as Chief Minister, now as Prime Minister for the almost 22 years. And besides that, today, I add to that, he is also the longest serving head of government, one of the longest serving head of government the world over. You see, you have seen so many presidents changing in USA, so many prime ministers changing in UK in short span of time. But and he has defied the principle of diminishing returns. Instead of anti-incumbency, he is getting pro-incumbency day by day. So in a milieu like this, when you have a huge support from the people of this country across, north, south, east, west, northeast. I think this is the first time you have a prime minister who has become a cord uniting the entire diversity of India. Anywhere he goes, he's welcomed with the same kind of enthusiasm, which was not so in many other prime ministers.
It's ironic, because diversity is what is being challenged in this.
Yes, absolutely. You see, for example, I was there in northeast, so in the early prime, and he's worked very hard for that. In his first term as Prime Minister, from 14 to 2019, he travelled to North East as many as 50 times, which no other Prime Minister. So he's actually united the entire country in a single cord, and that is why he has a pan-India presence as well as a pan-India acceptance, which was not so in case of any the Prime Ministers in the past.
So, Dr. Singh, you got a ringside seat into, the way the Prime Minister works. You're also in the PMO. So, you give us some examples. We all hear there is this citizen-centric governance, participation is more, less government, more governance. Uske thode examples, anecdotes that we don't know about.
No, I think you would recall, soon after he took over, he gave us the mantra maximum governance, minimum government.
Haan.
So many people were trying to figure out what this all about. I think all it means is that you have a governance where the government is a facilitator, not an intimidator. कि अभाव नहीं है लेकिन प्रभाव भी नहीं, आपको पता है वहाँ है वसीला है, लेकिन
जितने रेड्स हो रहे हैं सीबीआई के तो इंटिमिडेट भी हो रहे हैं.
नहीं, that is happening. I mean, that is a different case altogether. I mean, the law is taking its course and CBI is an independent body. But that apart, because if you go by that, then I rather you would say that in the last 10 years there's not been a single member of the ministry who has invited any kind of a charge, which was happening earlier as a normal phenomena. But I think what is the hallmark of Prime Minister Modi's style is that he has the courage and conviction to take path-breaking decisions wherever required. He has the courage and conviction to break the taboos of the past. Like, for example, soon after he came in, within 3 months, that dubious rule which had persisted since British Empire of getting the certificates tested by the government officers, gazetted officer, was done away with. Then, when I say taboos, also space, for all these years, the Space Department, the ISRO, was working behind a veil of secrecy. Now it's been opened up, which the media described fancifully as unlocking of space. We have private public participation there, private startups. Within just 3 years, we have more than 110 startups in ISRO itself, drawn from all parts of the country. This has all been happening because he has the capacity to go beyond status quo. And that also after doing due diligence, due study, because he's a consistent thinker, and he also gets into the micro, research of every subject. If you go to him with a presentation, you would, I'm sure, come back with 2 or 3 added suggestions to what you had prepared for. So that way he gave a governance model in Gujarat. And I think the hallmark of this governance model of Prime Minister Modi, or the Modi model, as you say, is that it's a sustainable model of governance. Nowadays, when we talk of sustainable goals, it's a sustainable model. It's sustained for 22 years and it holds the promise of sustaining in future as well. Second, as I said, it defies the principle of diminishing returns. Any model it's rather becoming more and more, widely accepted. And third, it becomes stronger with every challenge. As Chief Minister, when he was faced with the challenge of the earthquake, as Prime Minister with the challenge of pandemic, that's because he's so focused. And that kind of sincerity, commitment has also enabled him to earn the trust of the people. See, it's not easy to earn the trust. There's a lot much of hard work, sacrifice gone beyond. So, whenever he says something, the people of this country across, whether it's north, south, north, east, they feel कि मोदी जी ने ये कहा है तो ये मुमकिन भी है और इसमें हमारा कोई भला भी है. So that is, I think, a great asset. He's a great asset for India.
No, that I agree, because a lot of, he is the only person, they say, unki niyat theek hai, you may not agree with demonetization, you don't agree with a lot of his policies, but you don't question his niyat.
Not only niyat, I would also add, Priyaji, he is also open to inputs. He's a great listener, unlike many of us. He has the capacity to, maybe our response time falls short. But he can, if he finds there's something meaningful being told to him, he would, if your appointment is 15 minutes, it might last 1 hour. So he takes, of course, then the final inference drawn by him is in his own, which of course is very well done. He's very well worked out with a lot of homework. But he is open to take the inputs from all quarters. So that is also something remarkable about him.
So a lot of people say that, you are saying that he consults everybody, but the impression that we on the outside get is that it's a very one-man central decision maker and all of you.
I don't think he has the capacity to carry the team with him. Of course, he being first among equals, as is known in the Westminster model of democracy, he ultimately enjoys the prerogative of taking a decision, which of course he is doing with huge lot of objectivity, not with any personal bias or malice. But before that, he always is open to receive inputs, which he's been doing.
What would you say is the one of his most successful game change? I know you'll say most are, but most successful is it the Jan Dhan account, Digital India, the reaching out to the poor?
I think what is not, of course, you rightly said, besides the merits of these individual schemes, the undertone of these individual schemes is something which is not discussed about. I'll tell you what I'm trying to mention. Through these schemes, he has tried to change the political culture and the work culture of this country. Like, for example, when the Ujjwala was rolled out, the gas cylinders had to be given to the housewives. List was drawn by the administration of the collectors, of the needy, of the poor, of those who required. And the cylinders were distributed regardless of who the family was. Caste, creed, religion, region, nothing taken into account. We have been saying this, we've been asking.
Yeah, in fact in UP they were saying a lot of Muslim families voted for you.
No, I tell you, I was just recently back from Mainpuri, in Uttar Pradesh.
You're also in charge of those 3 states in
there
UP.
I found one of the bastis called Sikandrabad. The whole basti has been the beneficiary of Shauchalayas. The entire Muslim basti.
Achha.
So, his mantra was, reach out to the last man in the last queue. We would reach out to them who need us the most. We will provide what has not been provided by the earlier governments. We will not ask them, what is your caste, what is your creed, what is your religion, did you vote for us last time, will you vote for us next time? We will leave it to their wisdom, their discussion. So, this political, otherwise what was happening earlier, you have been a veteran journalist, you would recall, if tomorrow you make me a railway minister, first thing I do is construct a railway station in my village, regardless of whether there is a passenger or not.
Correct.
All sorts of these subjective things were happening. He brought in a lot of objectivity and also scientific angle to it. Like, for example, aspirational district is one example. In the earlier governments, we had something like backward district. So, backward district means if I am in charge of that GOM or the group of ministers making, I'll make sure that 1 or 2 districts from my constituency get elected. Now, here what is happening is you have laid down parameters 40, 41, sanitation, health, education, accessibility, transport, etc. Depending on that, which district stands where, vis-a-vis the first district in that parameter in the state, vis-a-vis first district in that parameter in the countrywide mapping. You have a dashboard time to time, it tells you which is down, which is up. So, no subjectivity at all. So, I think he has introduced a different kind of a culture, which is technology has been used to bring in transparency and objectivity, which was not happening. And now, with the Modi era, having made its footprint, I'm sure whichever the other parties also will have to follow this culture, because now the grassroots participation of the citizen is being realized only after Prime Minister Modi has come in. So, that kind of new political culture, which is based more on the people, or which is more people centric and not vote centric, is something which will be which the other parties also will be compelled to emulate if they have to survive.
Okay, last question, we're out of time, is this has been called as one of the most powerful PMOs since Indira Gandhi. And now comparisons with Indira Gandhi hoti hain zyada rather than with Vajpayee, who was another BJP Prime Minister. How do you react to these comparisons?
No, I think if the word is being used as strong PMO from a negative sense, then I would not appreciate. But yes, it's a decisive PM.
Okay.
It's a decisive PM. It takes decisions with due diligence. And all these decisions, whether it's Article 370, whether it's Ram Janmabhoomi, about Ram Janmabhoomi, the popular slang, the popular satire about for BJP, which the Congress always held out, कि अब ये manifesto लिखेंगे, इसमें लिखेंगे मंदिर जरूर बनाएंगे, तारीख नहीं बताएंगे. So that kind of satire. For 370 also they would say, अरे हमें तो पता है क्या मैंने. So he has the capacity to take decisions and to execute decisions with a timeline. So if that is, then also in the international platform, he has changed the discourse. Now the entire world is looking up to India. Rather, I was saying the other day, I sometimes feel the world is ready to be led by India under Modi. They're looking up to him for clues, whether it's COVID pandemic, whether other issues. So this kind of, and that has given a lot of self-esteem to an Indian, common Indian. Before 2014, you would recall, many of our youth would actually hire their identity. I've seen many of my students going abroad, and then somebody would ask them, are you from India? Where are you from? They would say, I'm from Asia. he wouldn't hesitate saying India, because so much of lowering of the esteem had happened before 2014.
But I thought Dr. Manmohan Singh was a well-renowned, at least I thought he was better known outside than within India. India mein unko
No,
thoda,
that apart. I'm not talking of individual. Of course, he has his own. But as a country, India has gained esteem across the world now.
Under Modi.
So, under Modi. And that has been possible because of a very decisive, resolute approach happening. But it's not arrogance. It's not also autocratic. Like, for example, if it would not be fair to compare with Mrs. Indira Gandhi, because she has that dubious record of having got the emergency paper signed in the middle of night
From the
from the Rashtrapati.
Yeah.
That kind of things don't happen in this regime. So, I think this is in a positive way a government which has given India a position of reckoning in the world arena.
So, strong in Modi's era means decisive. In Indira Gandhi's era, it probably meant arrogance, says Dr. Jitendra Singh. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Priya. I
and hope
really
to do more
enjoyed it.
interviews.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.